respectful of everybody's time, I'm going to talk into this so everybody out there can hear too. But so I wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for being here. We have really wanted to get down and start this process for quite some time. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So those that don't know me, a lot of you do. I'm Mike Burrows. I'm CEO of the Inland Valley Development Agency. It's serving as the lead agency for this regional effort, and we want it to be a regional effort. Planning should be, we believe. So I'm going to introduce a few of the project team folks. Not all of them could be here tonight, but we've got some. So obviously the two you're going to hear most from tonight, not me, for a change. Tom Dodson and Caitlin Dodson, who have been working on the draft EIR and working with all the cities and stakeholders, which we'll talk about a little bit, that have helped fund the effort to get this out in front of everybody and moving forward. And Michael Lewin, some of you may have met him before. He's our IVDA General Counsel, so he's also here for questions if they come up about the process. Ms. Miriam Beltran, who is our Manager of Planning and Programs. She's Chief Pilot on this effort. Next to her is Wendy Nowak with PlaceWorks. They are the folks that have prepared the planning document, compiled and aggregated all the feedback. And then Kim Stater with City of Highland. She's a project partner, so she's provided a lot of the feedback and obviously understanding from the City of Highlands jurisdiction. We also have her counterpart, the City of San Bernardino, Oliver Mujica. He unfortunately had another commitment, couldn't be here tonight. And so those are the folks in the room today. There are others. Obviously, this wasn't done in a vacuum. Lots of years of effort, as I've talked to some of you about trying to align the process here. But I'm going to quit talking, get ready to listen, and hand it over to Tom and Caitlin. So have at it.
Good evening, all. We have a formal presentation that we're going to make. One of the issues about one of the issues about scoping meetings is that oftentimes you don't have an understanding of what the project actually is. So we're going to describe it for you as quickly as we can and give you the information. A couple of other things. Thank you for signing in. And if you notice back in the back, there are cards that we've put out with some pins. The objective of that is if you're not comfortable speaking, or if you've got a lot of ideas you want to put into the system for us to consider, writing them down helps us to be able to understand what the concerns are that you have for the environmental issues with this project. Excuse me. I'm going to let Caitlin start in the presentation here in just a moment. Just so you will know, we're going to lay down some what I would call room rules as to how the process should work. We'll also give you the sense of what it is. But in the end, what the project is, not it, but the project. In the end, what we're trying to do is take your input. And I'm going to step out of order here for just a moment, because one of the first things that I get questions of often is, well, what do you do with our input once you have it? Well, we're preparing an environmental document, and what we do in that document is we will list every comment that you folks submit. By the way, you can also submit input through email, which is identified as a process in the notice of preparation. But the key is that over the years, and I've done this for a number of years, I've learned that people always say, well, how do I know my issue was addressed and where was it addressed? So any comments you folks supply this evening and or as part of the notice of preparation process, the acronym for that is NOP. What we do with it is in Chapter 2, we list every single comment that we receive, and we identify where we believe it's been addressed in the environmental impact report. So if somebody asks a question about traffic, we will refer you specifically to the traffic chapter in the environmental impact report, and we'll identify if we can, if your comment is really specific, we will identify on what pages you can consider it. So that's just the baseline situation we're going with. I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, who is going to give you, again, a short presentation to help you understand what it is that's being proposed by the airport gateway specific plan. That's a mouthful, so we'll be using the acronym AGSP most evening, and if you'll just keep that in mind, that'll make things flow a little faster. Caitlin?
Great. Next slide. So Tom just went over this slide here. We're just gonna go through, actually, Mike, do you want to go through this? Sorry.
The reason I have it like this is just in case I have any participants join via Zoom. I want to be able to see.
If you leave email the deck to everybody. It's not a lot of slides, and happy to share that out. Or we can actually stick it on our homepage for IVDA, where we do everything else. That's cool. That's where I go. So I'm just going to touch on this real quick. I've had this discussion with some of you. Not a lot of people know what the IVDA is. They're like, whoa, what's that four-letter word? So it's Inland Valley Development Agency, and it is the original Regional Joint Powers Authority that was formed for the revitalization of the former Norton Air Force Base, but also the surrounding area around it, roughly a 3-mile radius. So we were formed in 1990. Many of you know our sister agency, the Airport Authority, that came later in 1992, and that's really centered on the airport proper, what's inside the fence. IVDA is more outside the fence and out in the region. So over the years, we've done a number of infrastructure projects, planning projects. So this is not necessarily new to us at all. The base reuse plan for the whole conversion of Norton was an IVDA-led effort from day one. And so I don't want to confuse anybody. Obviously, we have many of the cities that are involved in this process as member entities. So those municipalities, City of San Bernardino, City of Colton, City of Loma Linda, and the County of San Bernardino are the member entities of the IVDA. So Tom and Caitlin are going to talk about AGSP. I just want to give you context on what IVDA is and why it's sort of being the catalyst to deal with the EIR part. But this plan is just getting started here. It is a living, breathing document as it goes through the process. We've received a lot of great feedback from the staff at both cities. Obviously, this bridges their municipal jurisdictions. So the key thing to help understand IVDA is it's a special district by definition. So we have some of the powers common to our members, but we're really sort of the planning lead to aid the cities in the process. Everything we do here when it comes to an environmental document actually has to come back to the IVDA board. The whole plan itself will have to actually be adopted by both cities. So there's many processes after this point in a multi-jurisdictional specific plan effort. So that's why it's taken 16 years to get this to you all, because there's a lot of work that goes into this to make sure that it is a regional planning tool for the future. Also addressing some of the things that have not been addressed, particularly infrastructure-wise up there, to give you an example, in many, many years. So that's what IVDA is. It is technically and legally the lead agency for the environmental document. That's why a lot of your comments are asking you to direct to IVDA. But we're sharing this out with both cities at the very same time because they're part of the team. So when you communicate with IVDA, understand we're making sure that those partners are engaged as soon as we have that feedback or that question, if you will. That's how we intend the process to move forward, because at the end of the day, they and their councils have to be comfortable adopting this document because it is their land use authority. IVDA does not have land use authority. It has a planning role here, not land use authority. So as far as zoning and decisions and things like that, the inputs that have come together thus far have come with those city partners side by side. So I just want to kind of lay that groundwork out as to what's IVDA, why is it here, because it helps, hopefully inform all of you why we're all here tonight. So hopefully that sets the stage, and I can hand it back to Caitlin.
It should. So the next slide would be, hopefully, yay, okay. So this is just a regional setting map for you all to kind of understand what area we're contemplating. It's a pretty narrow area just north of the airport. And it's kind of in the middle of the I-10 and the 210. And obviously, it borders the airport property, as you can see. So regionally, this is in both the cities of Highland and the city of San Bernardino, as Mike just said. Next slide. So these are the project boundaries as they stand right now, and the land uses are shown on this map. Unfortunately, it's probably a little bit difficult for you to see. But the land uses as they stand right now, there's residential properties, that, including multifamily housing as well as single-family residential. There's obviously been a conversion of this area with industrial and commercial uses, as well as some vacant land. So this project is looking to transform this area to one land use that will allow for many other land uses within that land use. So
Before you transition, Caitlin, to give you a sense of size and what you can see up there, that's a total of 678 acres is located within the boundaries that are shown up on that map. Of that, approximately 400 and plus acres are in the city of Highland, and 200 plus acres are in the city of San Bernardino. And in terms of land use allocation, Caitlin's already said it, but let me just reiterate, especially for those of you who are familiar with the area. I've grew up here. I know the area very well. I've been going down 5th Street since long before most of you were born. The types of uses we have broken down are, we have, like Caitlin said, residential uses, both multifamily and single. We have industrial uses, and we have commercial uses. There are two other uses that are identified in the plan, because a specific plan, as it looks at the whole of what the future is going to be, also tries to look at the infrastructure. So we have over 100 acres that's allocated to roadways within this area. We start at 6 on the north, 6th Street on the north, 5th Street and 3rd Street. And we go from Tippecanoe on the west to just short of the 210 freeway on the east. And we also have about 40-some acres that are allocated to flood control, and that's a City Creek bypass, which is just outside the boundary to the north here. And City Creek bypass goes all the way from City Creek, where flows are diverted on occasion when there's lots of heavy flows in City Creek. It comes down City Creek bypass. It comes underneath the freeway, the 3rd Street at Victoria. It goes all the way west to Twin Creek, or Warm Creek is the name of the creek, the channel, that you see just before Waterman Avenue. So that's the channel, and those are key components of infrastructure that need to be improved within this area. I'm sorry, Kate.
that's okay, and we're going to give you specifics on those exact amounts of acres in a little bit. But one thing I wanted to note is that in our project description, we do discuss what these existing uses are. So you're going to have the ability to see, once you have access to the document, which actually should be soon.
Actually, they've had it as a
Project description?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So yes, in the project description, we actually have the existing land uses, including the number of residents that live here at present. So that is, I know, something important to note as well. The land use that we are looking at and contemplating in this document is mixed-use business park, which is going to allow for commercial business park, like technological business parks, light industrial and industrial uses. And as you can probably tell, one of the sort of roadblocks that has caused this project to take such a long time to come into fruition is that these are really small parcels. Trying to enable developers to consolidate parcels, to enable larger uses or smaller uses is one of the things that this plan will do, but it also is constrained by the roadways because the roadways are going to remain in their existing alignments, although they will be improved. So you're not going to see giant structures within this specific plan, primarily because of the land use constraints of how narrow this area is. Next slide. So these are just some renderings of what kind of we're aiming for and looking for in this document visually. This is something that you're going to see in the specific plan too, lots of examples. So as you can see, industrial uses, light industrial, and then on the next slide, you'll see commercial and technology business park. So we are trying to sort of improve the visual of this area. And as you've probably seen, if you've driven on the west side of the airport, there has been a significant development that in much larger structures, generally industrial and logistics uses, this will be a little bit more of a mix, most likely. And it kind of is all dependent upon future developers' interest in developing this area. Next slide. Okay, so the project purpose, and I'm going to read these because I wrote them and I wanted to make sure that they get read well. So the project purpose is to align local and regional development objectives and implementation efforts for future land use, mobility, and economic development efforts in the multi-jurisdictional plan area, which is essentially one of the goals of IVDA has been to, and the SBIA has been to revitalize this area to provide economic opportunities to make the area more attractive to development. Because as you can see, if you drove here, there is a lot of vacant land and a lot of uses and just a number of residential uses that are actually not in use because they're in disrepair. The other thing is to create a transition area between the airport and residential land uses. And finally, Tom touched on this, but is to provide a catalyst to facilitate necessary infrastructure improvements for the present and future. And this includes transportation network improvements, but also drainage improvements, which are pretty important. City Creek Bypass has been in need of repair or expansion for a while, and that's one of the things that this project would enable the development of. Okay, so these are the objectives, and they're sort of long, so I'm not sure if you'd like me to read them or not, but essentially the underlined statements are the main goals: to provide economic opportunities, to enable, as I was saying, infrastructure improvements for water, sewer, and stormwater. One of our partners on this project is East Valley Water District, who provides water and sewer to sewer collection to a part of the project area, but not the entire project area. And there are improvements that they have planned in their planning documents that this document or this development would enable. As I sort of mentioned before as well, a distinctive design and appearance to sort of create a unified look around the entire airport, or the airport boundary, I should say. Streetscape improvements and to increase mobility efficiency and further reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions in the region is a goal of this project. As well as Mike touched on this integrated planning. We want this document to not just be an IVDA document. This is a document that we are working very closely with the City of Highland and the City of San Bernardino, as well as our partners at San Manuel and East Valley Water District. And with the public, we want your feedback as well. Next slide. So here you can see what Tom touched on. I don't want to go too deep into it, but essentially the City of Highland consists of 484.7 acres of the total 678.13 acre that that makes up the AGSP. City of San Bernardino is 193.43 acres. The main thing you're probably wondering is what is the actual square footage we're looking at in this 678 acre area. It's about 9,271,256 square feet, as well as the contemplation of 75,000 square feet of hotel to enable up to 150 rooms. And as you guys know, we don't have an exact development plan. This is a sort of 20-year horizon project. So this is kind of a framework for future developers to utilize this environmental document to enable future development, not this is the exact amount of square foot that's going to be developed by the project. It's sort of a footprint as opposed to a mandate. And importantly, there will be right-of-way improvements, and the area of right-of-way within this area is actually 141 acres, and floodway is 68.6 acres. So kind of this is just the basic facts. Is the next slide. So I've just told you what the planning area land uses are. I've kind of given you the planning area acreages, and then the key components, the things that we want you to walk away with is the plan is for there to be 9 million plus square feet of mixed-use business park with up to 75,000 square feet of hotel, but that this mix would create 5,097 new jobs. That's our assumption. Obviously, this also includes the water, sewer, stormwater, and drainage improvements. And the planning horizon is 20 years, which is, this isn't going to happen overnight. Next slide. Okay, so what you're all here for is the scoping meeting, and we are here, Tom and I, as the environmental consultants on the CEQA process. So we have a project timeline up here, but note that this is not set in stone. This is just based off of projections of when we can complete things. You're here in the scoping meeting in July, so the second arrow. We plan to publish the DEIR in August. That's our hope, but it is not set in stone, as I said. We plan to spend September responding to your comments, because that's a very important part of the CEQA process, is you providing us your comments on the actual draft EIR. And Tom and I tend to try to provide thoughtful, reasoned responses, which is the CEQA requirement. So you will see your comments will get responded to there. And as we said, if you make a comment here tonight, you'll see it in the actual DEIR. And then finally, in October or thereabouts, the document would be considered at an IVDA board hearing. But as Mike said earlier, that's just step one before it would go to the City of Highland or the City of San Bernardino for their adoption as well. And next slide. Okay, so this is a long slide, and there's not too many of you here, so I don't think we have to be quite so formal about commenting. But just in case hundreds of people showed up, we had to have a commenting procedure. I'll let Tom speak to this.
A couple of things. One of the keys this evening is to realize this is the beginning of the process. Mike's already said that. Caitlin's also said it. Excuse me. You'll have plenty of input. Tonight, we're not so much interested in your opinion about the project because we're staff. We can't do anything about your opinion. But we can make sure that if you've got environmental issues of concern, we can make sure that those issues are specifically called out and addressed. Okay, so for this evening, what we're doing is we're here to listen to your comments. We provided the sheets and back with some pens so you can write your comments. If you've got a lot of comments, just go ahead and write them in. Just make sure that you give us your name, and that way we can ensure that your information is incorporated into the environmental document.
Also, if you provide your email on those comment cards, it's helpful because we can make sure that you end up on the list to receive the document once we're done. So we also have the sign-in sheets. If you've provided your email there, you'll be on our list as well.
Okay, both written and spoken comments can be made this evening, and they will all be treated equally. Whatever you say will go into the document. Procedures for commenters. We're going to give you 3 minutes to verbalize your comments. We're not going to keep you to that literally, but we'd like you to stay to it because that'll give everybody a chance to speak. We would also encourage you again to write down your comments so that we can see them. We may ask questions if we don't understand exactly what you're trying to say to make sure that we can characterize it properly within the environmental document. If someone refuses to leave the podium, we will just stop recording at that particular point in time until that person chooses to leave. We're here to listen to everybody, not just one person. If someone's already made a comment that reflects your thoughts, we would encourage you simply to state, I concur with the comment made by whoever the preceding person was that did that. Caitlin, would you rotate and see where we end up? Okay, we're ready for comments. The evening transitions from us trying to give you some information so you can make cogent, good comments. And we're now here to listen to you. And I think the easiest way would be if you raise your hand, I'll just start calling on people. And I wouldn't line up, just wait till the person finishes and come up next. First person who wants to embark on the evening and tell us what your concerns are.
Well, and Tom, if I could just interject. So if I'm in the audience right now, the question in my mind is, all right, maybe I came up there and I said a few thoughts. And then I got back on the website and I got to see the full plan. Because the full plan, draft plan, not draft EIR, because that's not ready yet. We're here to do the scoping to be able to get to a draft EIR. I think of something else. And maybe I want to email somebody. Who do I email?
Okay, and the email information is in the NOP, and we should have put that on the scope, but you can email the information to this young lady down here, Miriam Beltran, and Miriam is the individual who's going to assemble comments on behalf that come in either through cotton picket. I spaced the word. Through emails, and also if you have a letter, we've got comments that we are accepting through July 18. So you can submit comments all the way through that period of time if you forget something. You don't have to worry about forgetting something. Also, if you can make it a short comment, we can obviously allow you back up here, go to the back and write it down, and we'll make sure we address it. Again, who wants to start? Oh, I would like you to state your name. Come on up to the mic. Yeah.
Oh, we are recording
Yes.
the verbal comments into the mic. That's why I was trying to talk in there. So that way we don't miss anything you say at all. We're writing it down, but sometimes you got to listen to the
We're not after your address or
audio.
anything like that. Just your name for this evening will be fine.
Yeah, sure. Andrea Vidaurre is my name. Just to clarify, so I'm asking questions and you guys are answering them,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Okay.
Oh, no. Let me take a step back. Our goal tonight is not to answer your questions here. Our goal is to answer your questions as part of the environmental document. If it's a simple question that you can ask that we can answer because we've got the knowledge, we'll attempt to. But in the end, all of our responses are going to be put into the environmental document intentionally because this is a scoping meeting. Now, please, if you got something you'd like to raise, please do.
Yeah, sorry, I was confused because, I didn't know we were actually going to do comments and I thought we'd have questions answered. So, I mean, I can start with, I do have a concern about how this is the first time that we're hearing about this as like an official meeting for the community to be a part of. I get that this is part of required CEQA, but I'm just wondering as planning departments and even the city planning departments, like, has there been workshops about this? Have there been any type of open public meeting for us to talk about this? Because I understand that the IVDA wants to do this, but I'm also wondering who's looking out for the residents that live there, asking them, what do they want next door to them? So that's what I'm trying to understand, like, how many meetings have happened, how many workshops, how much notification has been given, I can start there because I think that's
I
a
think
big
we
one.
can answer that pretty simply. This is the first meeting. There will be others.
Okay,
And if you want a sequence, and I would like to go through it because I think it's important, we will have the process that goes through IVDA. We have drafted a document because you've got to have something to work from. We've drafted a document that we're making available for people to make comment upon. At a certain point, this document and a recommendation to the cities will be made by the IVDA board. You saw the schedule that
Right,
we're
right,
envisioning.
yeah,
Now, then the cities have to prepare, assuming that they are considering going forward, they have to prepare a general plan amendment to incorporate the specific plan, and they have to incorporate also development code amendments that reflect what goes on in this specific plan area. So there's going to be, at that point in time, the cities take over and carry forward, and what you'll see is this specific plan will transition literally into a general plan amendment, which you'll be seeing all the way through till it's taken care of.
And if I could help with that one, because we've chatted a little bit about this, where the public meetings thus far, and I'd have to get with our Jennifer and our clerk of the board team, they have been at the IVDA board because we couldn't actually get to this stage until the IVDA board said, yes, we're comfortable you publishing an NOP, notice of preparation, and beginning the process. So that's where it has been up to this point. But now it is time for everybody to review the draft documents and then eventually a draft EIR, which has yet to be published, and that still has to go through the outreach and public review process. So is that correct, Tom?
Yes.
okay, that's fine. I understand the CEQA process. I am just still concerned that like plans are being made for a neighborhood without their consultation at all or their awareness that it's happening at all. I mean, these are literal homes that people live that at one point I get that they were rezoned and maybe they're out of compliance or non-conforming, but there are still people that live in this area and have probably no idea that this is coming up on them. So I would want to see in the environmental report or whatever comes out, the plan that you guys are going to have to like meaningfully engage the community, how far of a radius you'll be sending out notification, if it'll be sent in Spanish, if the materials will be translated, because this is a highly monolingual Spanish-speaking community. All of those things, I think, as part of the outreach process of CEQA, I think should be required.
All those comments will be taken into consideration.
Got it.
And Mike has already got plans to accomplish much of that
Okay.
as part of the IVDA process.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, it would be nice to know how many workshops are going to happen before it even goes up before the IVDA board. Because how else will the community be able to actually influence this before it goes to the cities?
Well, I want to go back. Every single person in the community, aside from workshops, has access through the website on IVDA, has access to the notice of preparation,
Right,
to a project description,
right.
and to a copy of the specific plan.
Yeah. But people don't know to look for that. And that's the reality, right? So that meaningfully engaging them means to actually notify them and send them what's happening to their houses, right? We see that in other CEQA processes, that they actually send out notification of an NOP coming out. Was that sent out? Any type of notification for an NOP? Because that's
Yes.
sent out in other cities,
The
at least a
answer
mile
to you
from
is
the
the NOP has
project.
been distributed.
Oh no, a letter to all of the residents in the
No.
area? Okay, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Yeah, that's vital. We see that in other projects for CEQA.
Again, we'll take that one into consideration and
Yeah.
work with the cities and the IVDA to fulfill your expectations.
Yeah, I mean, you might have a lot more people in this room if they knew what was happening. Okay. Some other questions that I have is, how are we going to be evaluating the emissions in this area, especially since you guys don't know how big the developments are going to be? I mean, a 1 million square foot warehouse versus a 3 million square foot warehouse is a much different emission. So I'm just trying to understand, especially because you talked about parcel, trying to create larger parcels for larger developments. How much are you guys going to be showing us the real impact? Like, are we going to know the worst possible example or anything like that?
When you're dealing with a programmatic document like we are, you have to create a conceptual model to work from. I'm not talking now about the actual emissions, I'm talking about actual development. I think if you look at the size of the parcels between the major streets, that is inherently limiting on certain development. And that's why Caitlin in her presentation pointed out that we are not anticipating really, really large facilities because they can't be fit between the streets. We're expecting a very, very genuine range of uses, and that range of uses is identified in the specific plan, which you can take a look at for more detail. We will address those at future meetings. It's too much detail for now.
Okay, so then the specific plan is already stating like what types of uses will be put in certain parts of the specific plan?
No, ma'am. What
Okay.
is allowable?
What's allowed, got it. Is there gonna be any type of recommendation on how to buffer between possibly commercial and warehouse, or is it gonna be free for all? The warehouse can go, right behind the YMCA park or right behind the Indian Hills High School?
To a certain extent, there is an openness in this process, but it cannot happen without the cities on an individual, case-by-case basis, considering each project that comes before them, just like they do now. So it's not any different than that. To the extent that it's possible, we've included policies to serve as mitigation, and we've also, we are in the process of incorporating buffering mitigation between uses that would be incompatible.
Got it. So then you guys, is there still room to recommend different policies or
Of
for you guys
course.
to
Of course.
change those policies here at
Yes, ma'am.
IVDA? Okay, because that's a big concern. We do not want any more warehouses next to homes where there are diesel trucks going in and out. There is an equivalent amount of diesel pollution in this specific area that there is by the ports of LA and Long Beach. That's how bad the pollution is here. So of course, we don't want any of that coming closer to the kids that play outside.
If you looked at the way this is designed, the specific plan area is intended to create the buffer that you're talking about
Okay, good.
between residential uses, schools, and the airport and future activities in the general area.
Okay,
But
good
to
to know.
come back and answer your specific question, yes, this is an open process at this point. You will be able to look at the specific plan and make suggestions, and you'll be able to look at the mitigation measures in the EIR when they come out to see if you consider those to be adequate.
Yeah, I recommend, you sound like you're well-versed in CEQA too, so I recommend that if you see that there are mitigation measures that are missing on air quality that you've seen and you'd like to see work in this document, they will be considered. I don't think that this is a process where we're saying no. We really do want your input, and you may have better ideas than we have.
Okay, that sounds really good.
Always remember something, and I apologize for interjecting and interrupting your comment. You have to start with something to be able to give a person something to say, I do like this or I don't like this. And this has been a lengthy process working with the cities. Let me give you just a sense. The vast portion of the acreage within the city of Highland is already allocated to light industrial uses. It's already designated on their general plan. So what we're doing is we're refining that concept with the different values and different uses that we're looking at, working with the city all the way through to make sure we can minimize conflicts.
Got it, yeah. No, it's just different perspectives. Some of us that also do community planning work in the area, we don't really start with something assuming what they want. We kind of come from a place of where is everybody at, what are their needs as well for their backyard, what are their concerns. So I think it's just a difference of approach and planning that we want to make sure that we influence as much as possible.
Okay?
A couple of things. I didn't see any objectives about community safety or reducing emissions. I didn't see any objectives about guaranteeing the economic opportunities to have for the local residents that are here. Just wondering if those are things that can be added, objectives can change.
We'll address that
Survey.
as part of our responses.
Okay, good. A couple more things that I think need to happen in the EIR is that I think we're going to need to evaluate how we're going to fence line test, like monitor the area, if there's going to be any monitoring of the area for air quality. If that's probably a mitigation measure that could be included, but I think that should be explored.
Yes, ma'am.
Especially both of NOx and also of greenhouse gas emissions. If there's going to be a measuring of energy consumption, if there's going to be any reporting requirements for the developments that are going to be in here, and how is that going to be made available to the community. And if there's going to be any requirements for electrification of the area, both of the building and then of the cars and trucks that come in and out of there. I think there are some examples of electrification plans that have happened at other warehouses that you guys could put here. Like, let's say 25% of the trucks that come of the facility are zero emission by 2030. 50% is zero emission by 2035. I think there's an example at another warehouse in Southern California that we could pull from.
The answer to you is, if you'll provide that material, we'll look at it and make sure it's given consideration.
Okay, very good. Other things to just take into consideration, tree planting programs to, create more shade, the heating, to reduce urban heating. I saw there was a little bit already in the plan about it. Just
There's
trying to
quite a
understand the
bit,
trees.
but
Yeah.
you run into the other problem that you've got to be careful with, which is water consumption. We don't have any recycled water available here within this area at this time. And you've got to balance how much and what type of vegetation you include in your landscaping. But the concept that you're talking about is clearly incorporated into the specific plan already.
Yeah, it's just really hard. If we didn't have so much pollution, we probably wouldn't need as much trees to try to clean it up. But unfortunately, we're in that place, right, where we have to deal with. How do you mitigate the pollution? Maybe if we worked on that, then we wouldn't need so much trees that sucked up water. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there for right now. I'll probably think of a couple more things as people come up, but thank you.
Yeah, and please, I would recommend sending an email in. Writing your thoughts down will be helpful for us, especially your comments, your mitigation measures that you're interested in. We'd love to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, sir.
My name is Stephen Robertson. I've lived in the community for about 6 years off of 9th and Sierra, so I know the area pretty well. This first part is just a thought, not so much of a question, but if this was a small regional airport like Palm Springs, would we be asking nearby residents for them to be rezoned and possibly moved out of there? Or is this only being done because this is a minority, poverty-stricken area? That's a thought that I had. What happens to the residents when this rezoning does happen and developers start moving in? We have 750 residents in this area, 900? What was the number?
I think it is 900. I was going to pull the number up, but I was
Remember, these
listening.
are estimates, sir, but
Right.
you're close. You're in the ballpark.
Whatever the number is, what happens to those holdouts who want to stay there because they've lived there their entire lives? Developers come in and they threaten them that if they don't sign the dotted line, they're going to kick them out with eminent domain.
Well, first, the developer can't do that.
They can't do that.
No, a developer can't use eminent domain. That's reserved for government agencies.
Okay.
So I only say that because I don't want you to go away with the impression that a developer can come force somebody
So
to do
a
something.
developer can't threaten somebody with that as a lie.
No. The-
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but coming back and answering your question, we have done the very best thinking that we could about how to make transitions. Let me go back and restate. All of the city of Highland area, not all, I apologize, much of the city of Highland area is already designated for light industrial uses. So residential uses are already non-conforming uses. What we've done is we've tried to take and and look at it and say, what can really be done within this area that can be, create a buffer, generate jobs, and protect residences. We will include programs to address those questions that you just raised, sir.
And if I remember correctly, 200 acres of this project is in the city of Highland, correct?
No, sir.
No, 468, I think,
Yes.
or 84.
And
Yeah.
are the majority of the residents in the Highland portion or the San Bernardino portion?
Highland.
So of those people,
In two areas, and I apologize for interrupting you, sir. Tippecanoe, in the area from Sixth Street down to Third. And there's another neighborhood that is on Sixth Street, north and south, single-family residences as well. The southern portion of that will be within the specific plan area.
and if this rezoning does happen and developers do come in and they do displace these residents, we already have a housing shortage in the area, severe housing shortage. Now we have potentially 1,000 more units less.
Yes, sir.
What is the impact of that in the area?
You've raised the question. We've thought of it too. It's going to be addressed as part of the environmental document.
But it has not been addressed yet.
It has not been published yet.
Okay.
There's a difference.
If I may, you've raised a question about developers pushing people out a couple of times. So let me just give you just a very brief background on the use of eminent domain. In years gone by, there was plenty of instances where cities or other municipalities would use eminent domain to take property to give to a developer or other project. That has not been allowed for quite some time now. That was a change in the laws of eminent domain. It can only be used for public projects, something that relates to the public use. It cannot be used to take property to give it to a private developer or private party.
Okay, that answers that question. So if I heard this correctly, the purpose of this
Take the burden next.
Thank you for taking the time this evening. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
My name is Laura Schultz, and I've been in this area for, I don't know, a gazillion years. So I have a couple questions or clarifications. So we have property, basically in Highland and in, the various cities. And I just want to clarify. So this is a specific plan, which there's 191 pages and that. So as this goes through, now the process, it would go through each of the city's planning commission as far as when these projects are being developed, correct? Or
Correct.
put through?
What you stated is correct, ma'am.
Okay, so.
Again, remember Mike said IVDA has no land use authority. The cities do.
Right, so so it's up to the cities, because one of the things, and I know we miss a lot of it, I sit on the Urupa Valley Planning Commission, and we've had several times when we've got the presentations and everything, and we're talking about a specific project. Well, great, but when we're making a decision on that specific project, and you're seeing all this empty land around it, you're like, oh yeah, that one, it fits nicely in there. However, what was missing, and now what we're doing, and I would like to see potentially in this, what are some of the projects already in the pipeline for the surrounding vacant area outside of this jurisdiction? Okay, so in essence,
May I clarify?
Yes.
Because I want to make sure we understand. Are you asking what are types of projects that are occurring in the general area? Or are you asking what's already occurring within the specific plan area.
Well, within the specific, at this time,
Okay.
nothing, correct? So it would be kind of, when we're looking at the EIR and we do these reports, so a half a mile away, outside of this jurisdiction, are they do they have a warehouse going in? Or do they have something? So when we look at, we tend to have tunnel vision. We just look at this and everything is based on this. But we forget that we also have 4 other projects very similar that will compound the impacts. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, that's called cumulative impacts.
Right,
And the answer to you is, it's a good question, and we'll make sure that we address it.
okay. So, and again, just to clarify, so the planning commissions in each of the cities will go through and specific development projects.
Let me take a step back, just because the cities can do that now. Somebody comes to them with an application, the cities can process it, and they're not stopping development within this specific plan area right now. What we're hoping, in the sequence of events that I thought I laid out, but I want to make sure you understand, IVDA says, we think this is a reasonable, good, specific plan for the cities to implement. That's the board. Then it has to go to each city, and they craft a general plan amendment to make any changes that are different from what they've got on the ground. And then on top of that, they also craft development code amendments to make sure it's consistent with what we're doing. Let me give you just a simple example. What we're looking at ultimately is Fifth Street is going to be a major route through this area. And we've got a new standard for Fifth Street being recommended to both cities to consider. They don't have to adopt that. They can do something else. But they consider it, and then even before they get to a specific project, they will be looking at the whole of what's proposed for the AGSP area. Then, after that's done, they could take individual projects under the AGSP. Keep in mind, projects can be submitted to the city at any time for consideration. Cities aren't going to stop considering applications because they have an obligation to consider them. Back, looking forward to it.
Good evening. My name is David Ferrugi. I'm a business agent for the Teamsters. We are right down the road here. I've worked here for probably 15 years or so in this area. Part of the benefits of my job is visiting with the community members, canvassing neighborhoods for political reasons and different things. It's kind of like a deja vu when I'm in this room, because like 2 years ago I was sitting in this room and we were talking about the Amazon project, the building coming on. They were going to start building, and the concerns that were brought up for the Amazon warehousing, when we talked to the residents, and we talked to hundreds and hundreds of residents, and the huge majority of the residents had no idea of what was going to be taking place, that, 26 airplanes going over their house and all the different truck routes throughout their neighborhoods. And I just want to reemphasize the communication piece on your end. If you can, it was brought up earlier, if probably the neighborhoods knew more about these meetings, probably have a lot more filled chairs and concerns that are brought up. So that's all I wanted to say, is just if you could really make a point on re-emphasizing the communication piece to the neighborhoods and the people that live right around there. It's very important. So
Point well
thank you.
taken, sir. Thank you. Next person? Come on down.
Henry Salazar, I'm a resident here in Highland.
I didn't catch your first name, sir.
Henry
Henry, thank you.
Salazar, a resident here in Highland. I grew up here. Probably got about 30 years of history around the city in San Bernardino, seeing this airport. Used to come to air shows here. If you had anything to do with that air show they had here,
The air show?
yeah, one of the worst ones I've been here in Norton. Don't ever come here again for that.
I understand what you're saying, and that's the gentleman to talk to you over there.
Ms. Pritchett, who I will look at right here, is no longer doing air shows. We aren't,
I was just
we can't
comparing
do it.
that to the old Norton Air Force Base show there, so that's all.
I went to those too. I like them.
All right, a couple questions about your responses to, we'll answer that in the document, or I'll get that answered. Who's going to be answering these questions and making your documents final? Aside, no, hold on a second. I know who's going to finalize it, the cities are. But in your agency or who you're working for, who is it that's giving you the okay to put these certain things in there?
Right now, it's the project team that we've been mentioned, the two cities, the IVDA, East Valley Water District, and the San Manuel Band. They are the ones who are overseeing this process.
So the IVDA, the San Manuel Band Indian Missions, and I'm sorry, who was the third?
East Valley Water
East Valley
District
Water District?
and the two cities.
And the two cities. So
Yes,
the
sir.
the five of them are, so if we come to you with a question or a recommendation, like some of the other speakers did, of some things that they suggest that are within this document, they're the ones that are going to have the final say whether or not it gets put in there?
Boy, that's a more complicated question than you might imagine. The answer to you is they have the final say over the document, but it's the IVDA board that will take the action to approve the environmental document. It is the responsibility, our responsibility, myself and Caitlin in particular, but all the staff, to make sure that we address all the issues. And there's a term used in CEQA which I think is very, very important. It's called good faith, reasoned analysis. And our goal is to accomplish that.
Okay. So kind of still didn't really answer my question.
Well, the answer is the IVDA board will make the decision,
Okay.
all right?
So
And
let's say if-
ultimately, on their behalf, the staff is reviewing the documents. Same thing with the city of Highland. But nothing can be turned into reality until the decision makers take an action. And those decision makers that will be taking the actions will be IVDA first, then the cities independently taking an action to say, yes, we're going to adopt this plan.
Okay. I'm just kind of just asking because it's going to help us as community members go along. We don't need to jump 6 or 7 fences to get to the first fence, and then we won't need to do all the other work. If it's the IVDA is who we need to talk to get 50% electrification in that document or something, or some type of job guarantees for the community, then that's obviously it's the IVDA. You guys are just the ones putting together what they approve then, right?
That is correct. And
Okay.
ultimately, again, this has to be taken to the cities for ultimate approval and implementation. IVDA can't implement this plan.
And the city public notifications, is there a certain process that's called that has to be followed that is required? Like for this meeting, right, they put out the memo on June 17th that we're having this. I only know about it because of my community and my involvement through my organization and the city involvement through my union. I shouldn't have to rely on them, and I'm grateful that I do because they've been beneficial to me, but my next door neighbors, people that live down the street, shouldn't have to wonder if their next door neighbor is a union member or a union official that has inside knowledge on the development agencies' issues that are going on. So what are the requirements that are supposed to be followed for public notification of these type of meetings?
The requirements, we followed them thus far for the process with the NOP.
I assure you probably have, but what are they? I'm just asking.
Well, I'm sorry. They include that the notice of preparation has to be published, and sent out to the agencies and any individuals who have requested copies of such documents. Then on top of that, we placed an ad in the local newspaper indicating that this scoping meeting and the notice of preparation are available. That's not mandatory, but we chose to do it because we were trying to be good faith
Yeah.
in this process. I think that,
So what local-
let me go to the question you're actually asking.
Okay.
I can't outline everything here. But
course.
what I can do is I can interact with the cities and the IVDA, and we can fully respond in the environmental documents so you can see it laid out. And we will do that.
Okay. So there's really nobody really has taken the forefront of, you know what, let's make sure the community's aware of what's going on. I mean, it's,
The answer to you is that it's not over, it's a start. You're giving us insights as to what you would prefer, and the agencies can consider that.
like, how
I
long
mean,
have you been-
logically, what you're asking for ultimately is send a letter to every person in the area.
Not necessarily.
Well, but I mean, that's the ultimate consequence of what
I'd be
you're asking.
happy with a commercial ad on Fox News and CNN, since that's where everybody's at these days. I'm just saying, just something saying, hey, IVDA, just as an example.
Again, let us address that. Your question is very pertinent and appropriate, and we'll address it.
All right. How long have you been, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been doing these projects?
Longer than you've been alive.
Okay.
I started, let me just give a quick. I was born and raised here. I was born in 1945 at St. Bernardine's. I grew up, went to high schools, watched this community grow, change, whatever else. Went away to college, had a great experience at college, but I came back to choose to live here to make it a better community, to the best of my ability. And so I have been doing environmental work under CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, and the National Environmental Policy Acts since 1970.
Which is when they were.
52 years.
Which is when they were adopted.
That's good. Congratulations on your success. With that much time and energy in there, I think maybe we should be able to know how we can notify the public in advance. And if it's something that IVDA is not doing, or the city of Highland or San Bernardino, maybe a recommendation from
You're
you.
reiterating your point. You've made that point. We
Yeah.
understand.
Okay.
I'm not trying to
Traffic.
cut you off. I'm just trying to say, you don't need to repeat it. We understood your question.
Okay, I'm just saying that, you gave your history, I was just saying, we might as well, we should be able to grow off of that. The truck routes, are those all established and permanent already that are on the, obviously not permanent because it's not a verified or finalized document, but is that the
There is a
setup that
traffic
you're gonna
study
have?
that will be published, and the specific plan identifies the main routes of travel. I mean, I could give them to you very simply. It's pretty obvious.
Fifth
Third and
Street, Third
Fifth,
Street?
Third and Fifth, and North-South, Sterling, Victoria, and Palm. Tippecanoe will have improvements, but it will not be a major north-south route. And Del Rosa won't, because changes have already occurred on Del Rosa to make it too difficult to run trucks up and down that route. That's our belief.
If you have suggestions, though, please make them in a comment, and
Yes.
they can be considered by the decision makers there, or by the decision makers and by the staff that's here today. I don't think there's anything that's been etched in stone as of
Nothing
yet.
is etched in stone
So-
yet, for sure.
So your comments are not set in vain by any means.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Sir?
I'm Mauricio Perez. I've been a resident of the Empire 32 years, all but 3 months of those. Lived in the area. And just to make this short, I want to have a few questions. A lot of these questions you've already asked, have been asked before, and you vaguely answered them, but to the best of your ability. So there's a lot of homes there. I'm seeing the map. Okay. Do you have any plan to do with those displaced residents?
Restate what you just said, the last part.
Is there any plan for the displaced residents that are currently living there now?
The answer to you is, yes, there will be.
There will be.
There will be. It's already incorporated into the document. At this stage, it hasn't been finalized yet. That's why I said we expect there will be.
And when will they know?
Who's they?
The people that I'm talking about that live there currently now?
They will know when the document is published and they can review it at that time, just like yourself. Remember, we're going to answer your questions
Yeah, yeah.
as part of the document.
I know this is just step 2 of whatever the process is. Step
Step
one,
one.
even more preliminary. But do you believe in good faith? You have sent out enough notice for the people affected by this to come out and state their opinions?
That's a personal question, which I choose not to answer.
Okay. Another question, do you guys have any businesses in mind that are going to occupy these spaces?
At this point in time, I do not know of any. That's me personally, not other folks that are involved.
Well, this is,
And keep in mind, we pointed out that if there are proposals to develop within the area in the interim, the city has to consider those applications. So I think the answer to you is, I don't know if we're going to be able to give you specifics, but one of the things that I believe one of the other persons asked was to address cumulative effects regarding what's going on in the surrounding area, and that will be something we will make an effort to do. We'll work with the two cities because they keep good records of what they're working on.
Well, and also keep in mind that this is a specific plan.
Yeah.
There's no specific development that is proposed at this time. This is just rezoning this entire, and designating this entire area for the proposed use, which means that somebody, a developer, has to come in and say, I want to develop this land. Or if there are people there, they will most certainly know at that point. But that's not an environmental process that we will necessarily be a part of. I do understand that you guys want us to notify the community, and that's been heard. And we will do our best to make sure that that is done.
have you done your best already?
Have you what?
Like, up to this point, do you think you've done enough?
That was a personal question. I said I
Yeah,
wasn't going
again,
to answer.
yeah.
All right. Another thing, even in your guys' rendering of the proposed warehousing and businesses in the area, I saw bay doors, which are going to be occupied by diesel trucks that do emissions in the area.
So
Now, I
you're
understand
concerned about emissions.
Yeah, you
Got
already
it.
stated that there's going to be a buffer zone.
You know, we get into an interesting point here, and I only raise this because I think it's important to know. Right now, the state of California is suggesting that all vehicles sold in the state of California, all medium-sized trucks sold in California will be electric vehicles by 2035. This is a plan for 20 years, and if what you're asking for, if it can happen, if the state makes it happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, those are like people in their individual cars. Those are industrial vehicles.
No, sir, I was talking about drayage trucks as well, medium size, not big ones. I wasn't talking, but they're in the process of transitioning too. Just think about South Coast New Rule. If you're over 100,000 square feet, then you're bringing in a large truck. Got to start converting your fleet every year.
But let's go back to that point of the buffer zone you guys brought up earlier.
Yes, sir.
What exactly is that? Because that's a pretty vague thing. Like, just
The idea is to
pollution in some
separate
area,
the
or there's not gonna be
separate the
pollution?
traffic from residences over
So
the period of time.
Is it to just like segregate the pollution into one area?
Well, you're still continuing to imply that the pollution will be the same 10 years from now that it is now. I'm not sure that's the case. But to answer your question, the answer is we're hoping to separate all major truck traffic away from residential uses over the 20-year period. That's a goal, remember, not something that we're going to force.
Is it stated in your plan anywhere that,
Yes, it is. It's actually stated in the environmental document.
okay. Then my final question is,
Sure.
in good faith, do you guys believe that this is the best you guys can do for this community?
That's not really something that we can
Yep.
answer. That's a personal question.
Thank you.
Who wants to take the cue next?
Hi, everybody. I have several concerns. So my first concern is that a mitigation effort in the EIR must bar any negative declarations in the process of the development. So when future developers come, I hope that you can put in any preventative mitigations on negative neg decks. And so,
Are you changing your topic? Because the answer is, we understand your question.
okay.
What was your name? I'm so sorry.
Oh, my name's Yasi.
Yasi.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and I work with the Sierra Club on the national team.
Yeah.
And then that also goes for parcel consolidation. I also think that the community here has brought up concern about lack of oversight and updates. I'm wondering if this team could come up with a creative way to give monthly updates. That's a concern I have, is that there's not enough updates in this project. And IBDA could be the owner of those updates between the cities and the residents that live by.
That's a good straightforward question, which
Yeah.
we'll address.
Thank you. Okay. And then my concern is the flexibility to allow medium and heavy-duty industrial development and code edits for that type of development. I highly am concerned about medium and heavy industrial. We have enough of those impacts here and across both cities in Highland and San Bernardino. Finally, the safety concerns regarding transportation. If you're going to be implementing mobility initiatives like bike sharing and car sharing, even though trucks are going to be electrified, I worked on the car rule, the advanced clean transit rule, or clean truck rule. I've worked on the warehouse indirect sources rule. I've worked on the innovative clean transit rule across the state. And public safety is still a concern for residents that live nearby. And the concern about having trucks that can carry drayage cargo near commercial and residential properties should not be an option. And I'd like to see that be mitigated in the plan.
Can you clarify the words you use? Clarify trucks that carry.
Drayage.
Drayage, okay, sorry, I
trucks,
just-
and then just like regular cargo trucks. Sometimes we even see like yard goats and like just a lot of obscenity cargo. When you have close by residential and industrial parcels in the Inland Empire, it's a theme to see that these trucks are driving through homes and schools. And so this overlay is a big concern because we're exacerbating the effects of like heavy industrialization near community residents.
Got it.
And then all the new buildings, all new buildings in this overlay, I think, buildings is a new field for me, but I think they must be electrified. Heat pumps, appliances, and working with Edison on some sort of assessment. I have concerns that the utility should be included in the design of infrastructure. I think pipe fitters and recycled water, we have a huge potential to implement construction jobs with pipe fitting, recycled water here as well. I know this is kind of veering off of traditional CEQA remarks, but I think that's like,
But we can make sure that question
Yeah.
is addressed.
yeah, and that's a really important comment. I think a community oversight structure is needed that is housed here, and the community is here. You should talk to them about that in the sign-up sheet or follow-up. I think that would be super rad. And I think all presentations and draft project descriptions must be available in Spanish. Didn't see that on the website about the project description. And yeah,
Again, it's an issue that we can take into consideration, and it's actually pretty straightforward to do.
great, thank you so much for your responses. And then I think also the health risk assessments that so I'm trying to like frame this in a way that's like relatable here. So the project, if if we continue on this track of encroaching near homes and schools, there should be a health risk assessment. And there's models of what that looks like actually, my colleague just flagged for me in the west side of San Bernardino with the BNSF expansion. They included a health risk assessment on what kind of risks are going to be elevated. And in this case, maybe having electrification or tree canopies or no industrial mitigation or 1,000-foot buffers could be a benefit environmentally. So I'd like to see any sort of health risk assessment here. And then just like echoing some of the community members that mentioned about jobs and livelihood, like, are we really trying to invite more minimum wage and industries that continue to not look at the community as a place that they call home? Amazon does not care about residents. Other companies that are multinational corporations don't care, and we need to really think about how we build an economy that's sustainable, is locally based, and driven by the needs that the residents need. There's not a fresh food grocery store nearby. There's not a green space that is safe for children and youth to like recreate, or an indoor recreation facility. These are many of the demands we had in the previous San Bernardino Airport conversations that unfortunately did not pan out because we were not told that the tenants were Amazon. But I think that there's got to be more community-based mitigations that increase livelihood in this area instead of medium and heavy-duty industrial employers that don't care. So if we can have mandates that empower high-road jobs or jobs that pay a living wage, opportunities to work on retrofitting, all the retrofit jobs are providing a livable wage, I think that will give us a big service. And I know the state has some of those requirements already that the city has to comply under for construction, but I think it just would be great if we could spell those out in this overlay process.
Again, you've made your point very clear, and we'll do our best.
Okay, dope. Thank you so much.
I just have one question. I want to piggyback off of Yassi's utility question. Recently, they built a large amount of warehouses in Moreno Valley. They were told, the local utility, Edison, told them that they won't have power for those warehouses for a number of years. They would have to go ahead and use their backup generators 24/7 until they can have electrification from the local utility. It also happened in Eastvale with those two Amazon warehouses right there on the 15 freeway, Cantu Galliano. Those backup generators don't have any kind of smog emissions. So,
Well, actually, they do. They have to meet a tier to be allowed to be used in South Coast, but they may not have the type of controls
Right.
you could use on a larger electric facility.
What-
I understand what you're saying, but be clear.
Yeah, so what is going to be done to prevent this area, this light industrial area, if Edison can't provide power for a certain time? What is to prevent those backup generators being run for years and years until that can be provided and polluting the area even more?
We can, again, we'll get an answer to your question as part of the document. My issue here is that we're looking, now you know the size of some of the facilities around here. If you average out the total development, you're looking at about 500,000 square feet per year over the 20-year period. Now, obviously, that could maybe be one facility, but it could be 10 smaller facilities as well. So we don't have an answer. I can't give you a hard answer. I can give you an answer from the perspective of getting a sense of what Edison can do, and we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Shayna Saders. I'm a resident here of Highland, like you, born and raised. Went to all the high schools, the junior high. I've been watching your life, and I didn't know about this meeting. Had it not been for my friend, I wouldn't have been here or known anything about this development and what you guys are trying to do. There needs to be better communication with the community. I live less than a mile from the Amazon warehouse that you guys have put in here. I deal with the traffic on a daily basis. I almost get creamed by trucks every single day because they blast through red lights. They honk their horn and think that that's sufficient. These are concerns that residents need to be informed about. These are things that need to be addressed before more development goes on in this area. You're talking bringing more trucks, more businesses into an unincorporated area that doesn't have the proper structure for it, and the residents aren't being notified. So you need to pay attention to the community around you, and you need to start notifying people more than just an ad in the newspaper, because what about the people that can't read? You gotta put it on the news, you gotta put it on Facebook, you gotta put it on all these other outlets. How many people in San Bernardino or Highland get the Sun newspaper delivered to their house? I guarantee you that the percentage is extremely low, and the Highland Community News has gone out of business, so we can't rely on that anymore. So you've gotta reach out to the public in a different way.
You're
Thank you.
restating what was stated before. We understand the concern. Thank you. Sir.
Good evening. Sean Martinez, Teamsters Local 1932. It's been a little while since I've been here. It's good to be back. Regarding the community engagement, I mean, during our engagement regarding the Eastgate project a few years ago, we provided Mike a few suggestions on how to notify the community and actually try to get them engaged. And I think during the NEPA hearing for that project, there were over 400 people that showed up to that meeting. And I think we were making comments until past midnight. So, you know, that gives you a sense for some of the kind of level of interest there is in economic development in this community, given the way that things have gone over the last few decades. And I'll just tell a story, because there have been a lot of good suggestions talked about here, but I'll add one more suggestion to it. You all know, and it's been mentioned, that we, you know, as an organization, as a coalition, go out and knock doors in the community. We talk to thousands and thousands of people, hear their concerns, try to, you know, help them think through how to engage in solutions for their community. And I actually had something funny happen to me recently. I have a vehicle that I don't drive that much, but there was an airbag recall on it, and I ignored the email. I think they tried to call me a couple times. I ignored those. And somebody actually came and knocked on my door for an airbag recall. And, you know, we're going to continue to knock doors in the community. I suggest that you guys consider, especially for the residences that are eventually going to be displaced by this plan, like, somebody should go knock on their door and talk through the plan and actually engage with people, not just, you know, put it on a website and expect people to understand, you know, what are pretty technical documents. I know you all are experts in this field, but some of us are still learning these things. But for most people, these documents aren't accessible. So I don't have any questions, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm going to make it easy for you these next couple minutes. But another, you know, suggestion, and this is not new, but you know, I think a pretty robust coalition came together to try to get some of what this community needs out of that Eastgate project, that Eastgate development. And I think we have an opportunity here, since we're a little bit earlier in the process, to actually achieve some of the goals that the community was setting back then. And so, you know, I think within this specific plan, I would urge the IVDA to institute a real process so that we can negotiate and implement community benefits agreements for each of the individual developments that are eventually gonna come to this specific plan. There's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of mistrust in institutions, and a process that actually involves the community and creates direct, like, contractual agreements between stakeholders and the developers is a really good opportunity to restore faith in processes and institutions, and, you know, create some goodwill in this community. And that's what we're gonna need if we really wanna revitalize this area. 'Cause I do think that the last, 30 years, to an extent, and not talking down on anybody's efforts, but I think they've been a failure. I think the question about, the tens of thousands of low-wage jobs, high injury rate jobs, high turnover jobs that have been created in this area, what has that done to develop this area, to provide opportunity for people? Not much. I think the answer is pretty obvious. I know you weren't able to answer it, but to me it's pretty obvious. So I think we have an opportunity to really restore some trust and get people engaged and optimistic about developing this community. So we're here for it. We can help you do this, and we hope you take us up on the offer this time. Thanks.
May I just make a point, and that is, keep in mind, IVDA does have a role in creating this plan, but it's your cities that are going to be implementing it. They're the ones who have to come to the conclusion that a community benefit is justifiable. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying, in the end, where the rubber meets the road, it's the cities.
Yeah, I mean, you all are preparing the environmental document. I know enough about the process now to know that, 10, 15 years down the road, when these developments come to the city to be approved, the developers are going to point to the environmental document that was prepared by you all and say, oh, yep, see, we're going to have this much impact here, and it all fits within the specific plan that was already approved back in 2022. Therefore, you have to approve this project, otherwise, you're going to open yourselves up to litigation. So, seeing that process go over and over again, I would urge the community benefits process to be started right now, before the environmental document is approved, and the cities are kind of left in this trick bag of not having a whole lot of, at least how they would understand it,
And
a whole lot of ways to get the developer to engage in that process.
Concur.
All right.
Concur about your comment, not that I'm supporting it. I'm saying I concur, I understand it.
Okay.
Keep in mind, the cities are a collaborator with this document.
Right.
You can't put something in that the city's not going to approve, so we've got to work through the cities as well.
Yeah,
At this stage.
We can engage with them.
At this stage.
We'll engage with them as well.
Okay, all right. I'm just making sure you understand, this is not IVDA that's in control, except in terms of a process. What the content is belongs to the cities and the other two parties in the group, East Valley Water District and the San Manuel as well.
But your comments here are meaningful.
Yeah,
Here to
we do
engage
understand.
with all
To
of them.
reiterate, yeah.
So, thanks for answering my non-question. I was trying to let you off a little easy, but
It's okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Jody Eisenberg. I have lived in this valley my entire life, and I have seen what's happened over the course of the last 30 years to particularly San Bernardino. So what we're looking for is what everyone else here has said: community involvement, good jobs, protection of the surrounding houses, mitigation, which I assume has to be in the CEQA report, of noise, air issues, as well as traffic. And is there a way to talk about the construction materials? Can we address construction materials that actually benefit the community, like materials that sequester CO2? It's not enough just to look at what we're putting out. Can we suck in some CO2 and benefit our community in that way as well?
Doggone good suggestion, and we'll make sure we address it.
You'll include that in the report and
Yes,
address that. Thank you. And what everyone else here has said, I, of course, concur in. The tragedy of what's happened here in San Bernardino, you know firsthand. You know what this community used to be. And we have set it on a course of low-paying, part-time, non-union jobs that have condemned us to the type of community we have now. And we don't want that. We want our neighborhoods taken care of, the ones that will be affected by this project. We want to make sure that noise is mitigated for the houses as well as the schools that are adjacent. We want to make sure that the traffic plan is one that will benefit our community. And I assume that if this project doesn't actually take place for another, let's say, 10 years or 15 years, there's a way to update the EIR so that it addresses the conditions at the time that construction will actually begin.
There's a follow-on CEQA process for each different stage and each individual project that they come through. Part of it depends upon what the content of this document is and whether circumstances change in the future, which is the key component to whether you do follow-on environmental documents. I believe one of the ladies requested that we not allow any mitigated negative declarations or negative declarations as part of future projects. Can't control that.
Right.
Because that's something that's out of our control.
Right.
What we can do is suggest that there's a desire to have certain things done and maybe create some thresholds that would say if you're bigger than this or if you're going to do more than this, this is what the expectation is in the future. So we have some ability to write those things down and try and address them.
I think we'll also make sure that your comment about, and your question is addressed in the document, so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
the follow-on process is better understood, because it sounds like that's something that the community is really interested in. So we'll make sure that's in the project description or somewhere else in the document.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody else got a comment?
Hello there, Marta Romero with Teamsters Local 1932. I'm actually a community organizer, so the notifications that you guys are hearing about it was actually me texting them, letting them know about what's going on. As a community organizer with the Eastgate Project, you know, I plan and I organize the door knocking, right? Going door to door. You made a suggestion, you actually made a statement, like, what would you like us to do, to go knock on their doors? No, I know that you wouldn't actually do that.
Actually, I think that was another gentleman who offered that suggestion. What I said is that we can notify people.
Right, so one suggestion that I have, you mentioned the fact that it was the newspaper. As we know, newspapers are not so, they're not too hip for nowadays, right? People don't actually read the newspaper. They're on Facebook, as we know, you know, they're on social media. One suggestion that I have for you guys is actually sending it out as a flyer. Not so much as the newspaper.
You said as a flyer?
Yeah, as a small flyer, small postcard, you know, letting them know, notifying them what are the dates of these hearings, what are the dates of these meetings, so that way they are aware of what's happening in their community. I'm pretty sure the IBDA has sufficient enough money from developers and everybody else that comes in our community. I live in the city of Highlands, so I'm actually less than 1.5 miles away from here, from that development that you guys are planning to bring. So I was not aware. If I was not involved with my job, I wouldn't actually know of this hearing today. So that is one suggestion. And by all means, if you guys feel that you would like to get involved, just give me a holler and I'm more than welcome to go out and getting involved with the community and notifying them as well.
If I can make a suggestion to everybody here. CEQA process has some unusual notification requirements. If you give your name as an individual and request copies of environmental documents from the cities or from IVDA, they're obligated to send you notices.
Correct, correct. And we are aware of that. However, our community, unfortunately, the community is not involved in any CEQA or any other environmental aspect of things. So it is hard for us, we the people that are connected with the fight, yeah, we are aware of that. We are aware of the notifications, how we could actually get, like you said, get in touch and get in the emails that you guys send out. The community, the people that are working and going in everyday life, they're not aware of this process. So wouldn't it be better, like I said, a suggestion for you guys to actually notify the community, let them know, hey, signed up to our mailer, signed up through this email, put your name, your email, and we will send that information to you.
All good suggestions, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your time.
Anybody else? All good things come to a close. So if there's nobody else who has comments, I want to remind everybody, you have until July 18th to submit comments on the notice of preparation. You still have the ability to submit us email comments anytime during that period. And also, if you've got written comments, you're more than welcome to provide them to us and allow us to be able to utilize those to be able to craft responses that are responsible to you folks.
So, Tom,
Mike,
can you clarify, that's comment on the notice of preparation, the first step
It's the very
in the
first step,
process?
yes.
Everybody will have additional time to comment through the rest of
Yeah, ultimately,
the
it
EIR
behooves
journey.
you to give us your addresses, because if you're involved with the scoping process, we'll make sure you get a copy of the environmental document.
We can also give it to you via email as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, that's
And
great.
we'll make sure that you guys are on the list.
See, that's Miriam there.
That's Miriam right there.
She's right here.
Say aye.
Yeah, but we don't have her email. Can you guys put it up there?
It's on the NOP, and I apologize, because if I'd have thought we would put it up here. Miriam, do you mind giving them your email?
We're putting it on the screen for you guys, sorry.
Oh,
I just
nice.
figured- Yeah, just, I
Okay.
suggested. Yeah. We're looking to have it completed and published in August, but obviously there will be other, that's just the time frame that we're considering.
So we're trying to give ample time to the city partners, because they need to weigh in on various components of it. So they're turning out draft chapters, and then Kim and Oliver and a whole bunch of other people have to be reading those to get the feedback in. So the August trajectory is a target. If we can do it sooner, we will, but we'll let people know. And everybody here, of course, will get notified when it's available. It'll also be on the IVDA homepage. And then I just want to say thank you, because you've given a lot of good feedback here. There's obviously best practices out there constantly changing. And if you've seen examples of good things, things that would work for, the sort of the scope of what is trying to be done here, we want to hear about it, because, we know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, but we don't know everything. That's for darn sure. And you're a big part of helping us through that process. So as I tell the project team from time to time, when my back's messed up, I go to the chiropractor to get back in alignment. That's what we're trying to do with this corridor, and we need help. So, Tom, Caitlin, anything else, other thing?
No, sir. Not at all. I guess the only other thing I might say, Kim, did you want to say something? No, you go right ahead. Kim is with the city of Highland. I apologize.
I'm the city of Highland representative. I'm the assistant community development director of Foundation, because I'm the city planner. So I
The San Diego City counterpart is Oliver Mujica. And he had a conflict, but he's been integrally involved throughout this process. So it's not just the planning staff. They've also brought input thus far from their public works folks. So can't talk about infrastructure without public works. And so people like Alex Kishta over at San Bernardino Public Works have also invested time in this plan as it's being developed. And we can provide those contacts to you all as well with their emails, so you know who at each city has been involved in progress to date, and hopefully progress growing forward, because they're the experts in their communities, and we rely on them too. So. Alex Kishta. And help me with his spelling his last name. I always mess it up when I type his email. Qishta. But we'll email the team those contacts as well. All right. Anything else, guys? Hey, thank you for spending all the time. And again, your feedback is very important, and we certainly will review all of this carefully. But if you think of something after the fact, I mean, a plan's got a lot of pages to it. We want to give people time to kind of think through it, and send us an email too. I mean, I think of stuff in the middle of the night. So if that happens, let us know. Thanks for being here, everybody.